Welcome to episode 128 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is completing his last days of his current job with our fine seminary, John Scott Sloat.
Yeah, by the time this drops, I think I'll be like 4 hours left.
Yeah. Moving over to the advancement team.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's happening.
So still working with the seminary, obviously. And
yeah.
Keeping your hands involved in several seminary things.
Oh, I like my fingers in a lot of pies, Matt.
Indeed.
Both literally and figuratively.
Yes.
I like my fingers in a lot of pies.
Yes. So how was your weekend, John?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I had spent a good part of the week traveling. So I had been in Arizona. And so some of it was recuperating from that trip. And then some of it was yard work, things like that. How about you?
How did the jet lag hit you? 'Cause that's 3 hours, right? Phoenix is Western Pacific time?
Yes. Yeah. They don't do daylight savings there. So depending on the time of year you get there. It was okay. Going out there, I think I woke up at 3:30. Yeah. And then you just stay up a little bit later than you normally would. And then I was coming back was easy.
Okay,
no problems.
Yeah.
How was the weekend for you?
It was good. Pretty quiet, pretty laid back, which was nice. Which is nice. During the school year for both Kate and I, we feel like we're going at a pretty fast pace, and so sometimes it can almost feel a little jarring to have slow weekends where you're like, we really don't have anything that has to get done or that we have to go to. That so both Kate and I can sometimes struggle to slow down and enjoy and relax.
Yeah.
And feel that pressure. Well, I should be doing something. It's really all right if I read a book here, take a nap. Don't have anything on my agenda that I have to do today.
Yeah. I was rooting for rain on Saturday for the nap. That would have been – instead of mowing, I think I would have napped, and I would have enjoyed that.
Yes, indeed. Well, if you'd like to reach out to the show and talk to John about lawn care advice, you can find him on Twitter. Actually, find us on Twitter. You can find him on Twitter as well.
I'm on there, yeah.
You can find us at VNSPod. You can email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. We are on Facebook, and we are on YouTube as well. We would greatly appreciate if you left a review and a 5-star rating on whatever platform you choose to access the show. Well, we've got a full show here, so John, we should jump right into the sports update.
Yes.
Have you watched any of the NBA Finals?
Just highlights.
Okay.
Just highlights. It starts. What time do those games start?
It's 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, that's a wind down time of the evening for me.
I feel like that's being generous. I feel like that's when you're actually like in bed.
I'm in bed. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But it's probably 10 o'clock before I fall asleep.
Okay, gotcha. Well, so we're recording on a Monday. Mm-hmm. And as we record, the series stands at 2 games apiece. But by the time this episode drops, Game 5 will have happened, and one of these teams will be leading 3-2. One of the things I've enjoyed about this series, I really don't like either team, so I'm more rooting against Golden State than I am rooting for the Celtics. I've appreciated the fact, I've enjoyed the fact that for the most part, Draymond Green has been terrible.
See, I think I'm the other way in this series. I think I'm rooting against the Celtics.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I can live with that. It's been – here's what's been disappointing. I think for the most of the NBA playoffs, there hasn't been a lot of really close games. Even in the finals here, like all the games have been – like the final margins have been around 10 points at least. So it's like –
There's not a last-second shot.
Exactly. There's not
that.
the high-stakes drama that comes down to the last, minute where you're like, oh, this is a 2-point game. Could go either way.
Yeah.
So,
how are the ratings? Any idea? Have you heard?
Well, for Game 1, I think it was the lowest rated Game 1 in 15 years.
Okay. I'm trying to think what was happening 15 years ago that would have caused low ratings.
So this is 2022, 2007. I don't even remember who would be in the finals then.
Yeah, maybe that's a reason. Yeah. Was that bad?
Yeah. Though, this part of me wonders. It may not be this, but at the end of the conference finals, there was that was right around the time there were a couple of shootings, mass shootings. And at both – this was in the conference finals. In both of the conference final games that I watched in the aftermath of that, they went out of their way to make a political statement. Please contact your senators, your congressional representatives, and advocate for common sense gun laws or whatever. Like, I don't think the NBA has learned its lesson that when it goes political, it hurts itself in terms of ratings. So I wonder if part of that's the reason. I mean, I know that I'm convinced that's a major part of the NBA's struggles over the past couple of seasons is they've gone so overtly political that it's getting in the way of people like, well, I don't come to sports to be preached at. I come to sports to escape that.
I think it's a far more simplistic answer. The Knicks are no good. If the Knicks were amazing, the ratings would be through the roof.
Well, it would help to get, the largest media market in the country.
Yeah. Lakers-Knicks finals, I mean, it's going to be insane.
Yeah. Yeah, though Boston's not a small market.
No, but it's not New York.
Okay. Well, speaking of New York, let's talk about your Mets.
Yeah, so we had a West Coast swing. So we went 5-5 against two very good teams and one struggling team.
Okay.
So split with the Dodgers, 2-2. We lost to the Padres, but had some injuries along the way. That I think hurt us. And then those injured players came back for the series against the Los Angeles Angels, and we won. So the hard part in our division, though, is the Braves have won 11 in a row.
Okay.
And so now we're only 5.5 games up.
All right, still a little cushion there, though.
Yeah, quite a bit of cushion. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the Angels. There was something interesting that happened with the Angels this weekend. So they fired their manager.
Mm-hmm. Joe Maddon.
Yes.
Famous for –
I mean, he managed the Cubs
when they won the
World Series.
Yeah, and was with the Tampa Bay Rays
as
before
well.
that.
So he's obviously a very good manager. But the Angels had been struggling, and in an effort to try to change the vibe, he decided, I'm going to try to fire my team up by getting a mohawk.
Mm-hmm. Which is classic Joe Maddon.
Yeah.
If you know Joe Maddon.
He's a little off the wall.
Yeah. He's a quirky guy.
Yeah. The only problem is that almost immediately after he got the mohawk and before he could reveal it to his team, he was fired.
So he got fired with a mohawk.
With a mohawk that he never got to use for motivational purposes for his team.
Interesting.
Yeah. Only in baseball. Yeah. Like, can you – that's not going to happen in the NFL. That's not going to happen in the NBA.
No.
But in baseball, it's like, oh yeah, what's the big deal? Like it's no like.
Yeah, I don't think that would happen in the NFL. Certainly not the NBA. Like I'm trying to imagine like Rick Pitino or one of these Italian coaches with the slick back hair doing this.
Or even Popovich.
No way. Absolutely not.
Yeah. So. Anyway, I just found that amusing. But you have another sports-related.
Yes, I'll keep this brief for you. I was at my conference in Phoenix, and there is a group that often gets plugged at these conferences called Made to Flourish. We've had some conversations with them. One of their honchos, who was there that I got to speak with for a long time, has the name Kevin Harlan.
You might need to help our listeners understand why that's amusing to us.
So he's a sportscaster. I think he does March Madness.
He does college basketball, he does pro basketball, and he does pro football. He might do other things. Those are the things I know about.
So he started with
– and he's one of the most well regarded. He's one of the top tier guys.
And he has a very recognizable name. Or voice. But people don't know what he looks like.
Yeah.
So he was with the Packers, I think, for a time. But he's better known for being the Kansas City Chiefs. He was the voice of the Chiefs. And so Pastor Kevin Harlan moves to Kansas City to be a part of a church out there and has a connection to sports. So he's on the Fellowship of Christian Athletes list in Kansas City for speaking engagements. And so this high school, sort of out in the country in Missouri, invites him in, and they ask for his bio. And he sends it to them, I've been a pastor for X amount of years, been doing this, been doing that. And he goes to this PTA meeting, not thinking of anything. And he said the parking lot is just packed out. And he walks up and he sees a poster, and it said, "Come here, Kevin Harlan, voice of the Chiefs, tonight, 8 o'clock or whatever." And he walks in and he sees the woman who scheduled him, and she goes, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much for coming. We so appreciate your work with the Chiefs." So clearly has no idea what he looks like. She goes, "I thought it was curious that you didn't mention your radio work in your bio."
Right.
And he goes, I'm so sorry. I have some very hard news for you. That's not me. I just have the same name.
No.
And this woman just goes white. And he goes, "But I have something prepared, so I'm ready to go on and speak." And so somebody introduces him. He goes up there, and he said it was a I believe it was a parent-teacher association, and the crowd was like 3/4 men.
Yeah.
Who never show up to PTA meetings.
Of course.
And he goes, "Well, I have some troubling news for all of you. I'm going to need some grace this evening. I am not Kevin Harlan, voice of the Chiefs." What makes the story better is so he's with this organization, Made a Flourish. He travels around the country, and he was on a flight. It almost doesn't matter from where to where, but the sportscaster Kevin Harlan was also on that flight. And so when they got off the flight, they made a beeline for him.
Yeah.
And they started sharing stories. So he told him about this PTA meeting. He's received gifts for broadcaster Kevin Harlan. Broadcaster Kevin Harlan has received gifts that are for Pastor Kevin Harlan.
No way.
And they were able to trade stories back and forth about all this that had happened.
That's fantastic.
I heard this story at the conference. I thought of you immediately and thought you would enjoy it.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy listening to Kevin Harlan.
Yeah.
The sportscaster. I've never heard Kevin Harlan, the pastor. I'm sure he's wonderful.
He was very nice. I don't know much about him other than that, but
okay.
And his name is Kevin Harlan.
What a life! What a life!
What a charmed life!
Yeah.
To receive gifts for sportscaster Kevin Harlan when you were not sportscaster Kevin Harlan.
Yeah, I mean they should have. Did they exchange contact information so they can swap the gifts, or is it just sort of like you keep your stuff, I'll keep mine, kind of?
Well, I think gifts sent to sportscaster Kevin Harlan were much better.
I'm sure,
and so I don't think that was ever put out on the table.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. Well, I don't know how to transition.
That's a great story.
It's a great story. It's a great story.
Good. I heard it. I immediately texted you and went, I have a story for the pod.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, speaking of stories that we enjoy telling, we should move into our discussion of Mere Evangelism by Randy Newman. So just a teaser, we did our interview with him, recorded our interview with him that will air July 5th, so a little ways yet. But
a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Great guy. But yeah, we had said we're going to discuss chapters 4 through 7. We're actually only going to discuss chapters 4 through 6. So chapter 4, the stirring of uneasiness. Chapter 5, the centrality of the gospel. And chapter 6, the value of imagery. So, John, what caught your attention in those?
I think what catches my attention in many of these chapters is just how intentional and thoughtful his approach to evangelism is.
Yeah.
And looking at it through the eyes of C.S. Lewis, I think is a good framing. So in The Stirring of Uneasiness, it's really all about making them feel their own hypocrisy and sin. And doing that in a winsome, generous way.
Yeah.
I really appreciated it, and I thought it was good. What were some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I appreciate is this chapter helps us, I would think, get comfortable with that tension. I think there can be an impulse in evangelism where you feel like any of those sorts of tensions, like you feel the immediate need to step in and just give the answer, or just be like, oh, well, it's this, rather than letting that person kind of live a little bit in that kind of unresolved tension of, yeah, I don't have a good answer for that, or I don't know how that works, or you've hit something that I can't quite articulate. So I think – and then even that he gives some suggestions on page 65 about how to actually create / raise that tension, and gives some suggested starting points, some statements, some questions. And I think that's something where we as Christians need to be probably a little bit more comfortable with embracing some of that tension, even in our own lives, let alone in working with unbelievers.
He tells a great story at the end of the chapter where he and his wife are sitting at the dining room table for dinner, and they start to smell something burning. They run into the kitchen, can't find anything. Smell goes away. The next night they come down to sit for dinner, and they smell the same burning, and they start looking in different places. And something old in the fixture had melted and was burning a little bit. So it was anytime they turned on the dining room or kitchen light, whatever it was, something started burning. And
it would take a while for it to get hot enough for that smell to appear.
And his point is that it's hard to give a solution to the problem until you know what the problem really is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I thought that was helpful.
Right, and I think sometimes we as Christians can be hesitant to even talk about sin because the gospel can be approached in a way that's like, oh, God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life. Like you just need to basically follow Him and He'll make your life better, or you'll live the way you're supposed to. And not actually get to the core of. You are a sinner. Like you have offended a holy God, and a good starting point is you can't even live up to your own conscience, let alone the standards of a holy God. So I think that was a helpful chapter there. What about the next chapter, chapter 5, centrality of the gospel? It's just a good, straightforward, making sure you clearly communicate the message of the gospel. A lot of the book focuses on pre-evangelism, but this one is very much on what could you call it, evangelism proper? Yeah,
maybe the formal part of evangelism.
Sure.
It's it's certainly after the pre-evangelism. Probably evangelism proper is a good thing.
And then chapter 6, the value of imagery. I thought was a really interesting take on avenues into evangelism.
Yes. This is the one I went like this is a big area that I lack. I struggle to come up with these in even sitting here reflecting. Goodness, what images would I use?
Yeah,
is always a hard one for me to come up with. But he's totally right that Lewis used these images all over the place.
Right.
I even think some of my best illustrations is going back and stealing from Lewis in this way. What were your thoughts on imagery?
Well, I think what I appreciate about this is that I think there is and I think he makes this point nicely, is that when it comes to evangelism, we need to make sure we're going after not just the head, but the heart, in terms of that sense of connecting with longing and beauty and things that he makes a good case for helping people to connect. Okay, when you see something beautiful in the world or you experience something beautiful in the world, that's a pointer.
Oh yeah,
that's a pointer beyond itself to something greater, and to be attentive to those kinds of things, and even using the rich reservoir of biblical imagery that is there in the Psalms or other poetic texts, or even in the parables. I think you could use to help people connect with the need for the gospel is something that I think I need to get better at as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Anything else on that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
It does provide a nice segue into our main topic today, which is we've sort of put it in a stronger form than perhaps we mean, maybe not.
Although lots of other people did too.
Yeah. Our main topic is, why are Christian movies bad? And what's funny is when you just
Google that,
yeah. there's a wealth of articles and such discussing this. So, and we'll link to some of them in the show notes here. But I think we can start with, we're making generalizations, and we also, I think we also want to affirm that there are brothers and sisters who are making good faith efforts to make films, and we're not trying to trash them or denigrate them. We're looking more just at the product itself. Like when you look at the finished product, why, as a general rule, are Christian movies so bad? And so I'll just let you start. There's a lot of different directions this can go, I think. So when you first think about that question, what initially comes to mind about this is why Christian movies tend to be bad?
So here's my sense, and this is probably the only, before even reading or even glancing at some of the articles that we have, this was my one thought. Tolkien, in I can't remember what essay it is, but I think it's called On Fairy Stories, talks about when the meaning of your message rises sort of above the narrative, and it becomes obvious, it ruins everything.
Yeah.
And his argument was just write a good story and your values will come out in the midst of it. And so I think that's why Christian movies are bad, is because what they're trying to do is so transparent that it ruins the narrative.
Yeah.
And after that it becomes they just don't have the money or equipment or ability that no offense to these mega churches in Texas that are putting these on, but yeah, so those are my probably two thoughts. What about you?
Well, I'll follow up briefly on the Tolkien end of things, because I feel like that is one difference to some degree between him and Lewis when it comes to their approach to fantasy. I feel like Lewis tends to be a little bit more transparent without being preachy. Like Lewis is not preachy, but
I'd agree. Yeah,
but there's still more transparency, I think, in what Lewis is trying to do than what Tolkien is trying to do.
I agree. Absolutely.
And so part of me brings that up just to say I think I think Tolkien is right, but I think you can probably be maybe a little bit more transparent like Lewis and still tell a good story that's not preachy or where the message so transcends the story that you're like, oh, this is just a shell.
Yeah. There is part of me that wonders, and we'll never know the answer to this, because Lewis had such success before writing Narnia and was such a well-known name, that if he had just written Narnia without being sort of this known apologist and evangelist, if it would have taken off as much as it did. But that's an answer we could never know.
Yeah. I do think you're right about oftentimes just the money issue, right? Between budgets, equipment, quality of actors and actresses and such can make a difference. And I think another angle I would go at is I think it depends on who do you see your audience as. Because it's one thing where if you say, okay, I'm going to make a movie for fellow Christians. That's my audience. That's who I'm aiming for. Versus I'm going to make a movie that I hope has mainstream success as a sort of evangelistic or maybe even pre-evangelistic film.
Yeah.
Because what I regularly see in terms of a lot of these Christian movies is if they think that's going to be evangelistic or pre-evangelistic, they don't sometimes I just wonder, have you met an unbeliever?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, do you know a non-Christian? Or at least, do you know a non-Christian outside of the South where there's just saturated cultural Christianity and so much of the air that, maybe somebody in Birmingham, Alabama might, resonate with some of that. But realistically, somebody in Seattle is going to look at that and laugh. Like, that's not the real world. Like that's not even there's just no like connection point in their brain of like what is that? Like, so
how does this connect to reality?
Yeah. I also think that back to your initial point, when you try to Christian movies tend to try to do too much. They feel like, well, we have to get the gospel in there.
Like a clear proclamation.
A clear, traditional, almost like four spiritual laws, kind of like God loves you, you're sinful, Jesus died for you, trust in him. Like they feel like they have to get something like that in the movie itself. And I just don't think that's typically the best medium for that.
And I will say, when this happens sort of on a non-Christian side of things, like if there's an environmental message or if there's a LGBTQ message, I think that drives me equally as insane, where I just like, oh my gosh, there's the message. It sort of ruins – it becomes bigger than the movie.
Right. Yes, I agree with that.
So I want to be fair in that description.
And this is honestly, I think, part of the reason – I can't remember if I said this on the pod or not. I know I said this to you off pod. I think one of the reasons that Top Gun Maverick has been so successful is that it doesn't have any agenda in it. Even though it's pro-military, it's not like this – there's no character in that movie that's like, well, we have to do this to defend the free world and we're right. It's just, here's the mission. How are we going to do it?
Yeah.
The country's not even named that the Navy is attacking. Like, it's just it. And I think that's part of what attracts people is, okay, I just came here to be entertained. Don't preach at me.
Yeah.
Don't preach your social agenda. Just entertain me. And I think sometimes that's you're right that there's that can happen with Christian movies as well. It's like, oh gosh, yep, because it can feel like the bait and switch. You baited me in with the appearance of entertainment. Oh, okay, now here's your message. Like, okay, that feels like you've bait and switched me.
What was the last Christian movie you saw? I generally try to avoid them so I don't have to give an opinion about them. That's usually my play, although here I am giving lots of opinions about them.
Right. I'm trying to think. I struggle. Like, I've not seen any of the God is Not Dead.
Nope. Haven't seen that.
I've not seen it. I'm struggling. I mean, do you consider
I watched half of Fireproof back in the day.
I never saw that.
When I was in college, I watched that.
Like, do you consider Facing the Giants a Christian movie? To me, that feels
I never saw it.
borderline because there's not there's a message there, but it's not. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that came out of that church in Georgia.
I think there was a big church in Georgia that made that movie happen. Yeah.
So, but difference there, that had some like big name Hollywood actors in it. So it wasn't like, who's this person? Like, no one's ever heard of these cast people because and that's not to like they can be good actors, but like, So yeah, I just avoid them too.
Did you ever see the movie that was filmed here in town?
Yes.
How was that? Was that a Christian movie? I have no idea.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. I mean, it wasn't a big budget movie, but
what, the guy from Lost in it?
Yes.
I remember seeing him around town. I remember just being like, whoa, that's John Locke.
That's John Locke from Lost. That's right. That was not I would not call that a Christian movie. I mean, it had a message that was I think very positive, but I would not classify that as a Christian movie. I mean, you know people that were in it.
Yes. Oh, yes. One of them sat in front of me at church the other day.
Yes.
I suppose yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple rows. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So we went to the premiere because we're friends with that family. And, I think we'll link to the Jared Wilson article on For the Church. This was written about 5 years ago, but it's entitled "Why Christian Movies Are So Terrible." He lists 5 reasons, actually 6, I guess. Christian movies are not made by artists, but by propagandists.
Generally speaking, I think that's true.
Often true.
Yeah.
Christian movies take place in the imagined reality of Christian sentimentalism.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah. Christian movies emphasize narrative tidiness over nuance.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. Christian movie theology must be contained in platitudes.
I'm wondering what he watched recently that was so frustrating.
No,
because I totally know what he's talking about there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he also has, even the best Christian movie will never be cool.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Yeah, as long as we're looking at like cool in the sense of appealing to a mass market culture, I think.
Yeah, I mean, unless we're going to start calling Lord of the Rings a Christian movie.
Yeah.
Or even Harry Potter a Christian movie, with some death and resurrection motifs in there. You can't. Yeah, it's never going to be cool.
Right. Yeah, and that's not to denigrate brothers and sisters working in that area. It's just the reality. And maybe it's one of those situations where you can actually do more by doing less. Mm-hmm. Like if you approach a movie as let's raise this issue, let's expose this, and maybe hint towards a solution at best. That's okay. Again, I think some Christians can feel this compulsion of I have to get that gospel presentation in there. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
No, not in the movie. No.
So, I just think also that area of sentimentalism, the living in non-reality.
It always seems to have an atheist or an agnostic guy who's an alcoholic or has a drug problem who had a child pass away and he blames God and all that. Yes, that seems to be a regular feature.
Sure. Yeah. And it can certainly they just seem to feed into the completely unrealistic and actually at times I'd say a distortion of the gospel where it's like, yeah, this person's life's a mess. come to Jesus and your life will no longer be a mess.
That's right.
Like there's not the nuance of, well, no, your life still will likely be a mess, or like you'll have to be cleaning up the mess from your previous life before Christ.
Yeah. It's
not this like, oh, just come to Jesus and everything will suddenly just get instantly better.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, any other thoughts on why Christian movies are bad?
Emphasizing the platitudes. I mean, I made fun of God's Not Dead to a class one time. It did not go over well.
Yeah.
But I said, yes, the greatest argument to God's Dead by Richard Dawkins was God's not dead. No, he's not. Sort of a joke. That did not go over well with college freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah. Well, because again, oftentimes those kinds of movies feel like you're just preaching to the choir.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're giving this very sterilized, simplistic version of what could be a very complex conversation between an actual atheist
mm-hmm.
and an actual Christian.
Yeah.
That just devolves into sort of gotcha moments of,
mm-hmm.
see, okay. Yeah, just not my cup of tea.
Anyway, are we ready to stop the gripe train here and move on to Today in Sports?
Let's do it.
Okay, 1952, the Boston Braves. Warren Spahn
Yep.
ties NL record held by Jim Whitney with 18 strikeouts against the Cubs in 15 innings.
Okay, there's a couple things notable about that. First of all, is the 18 strikeouts, but what's probably more remarkable,
They pitched 15 innings.
He pitched 15 innings. I mean, we live in a day where that's like 3 starts for a guy.
Well, if you get like the ideal for each pitcher right now, I think is to complete 6 innings. If you can complete 6 innings, you're in a really good spot. And it's rare to see 7, 8, or 9 innings completed.
Just a completely different era.
1974, Nolan Ryan strikes out 19 and 12.
Yes. So along the same lines.
Similar.
Right.
A little more impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. 19 in 12 innings. Yes.
1990 NBA Finals. I get the feeling we're going to have a string of NBA Finals.
I only picked 2, but there were more I could have.
Defending champs, Detroit Pistons. Tongue-tied.
See, here's the problem. You did not do your typical warm-up exercises before we went on air.
Unique New York.
You didn't do it, and so you're struggling now.
Detroit Pistons beat the Trailblazers 92-90 in Game 5 for back-to-back titles. MVP Isaiah Thomas.
Yes, the bad boy Pistons.
Mm-hmm. And then, where was I? 1998, just to clarify. NBA Finals, the Bulls beat the Jazz 87-86 in Game 6 for their 3rd consecutive title and 6th in 8 seasons. MVP is Michael Jordan for the 3rd straight year and 6th time.
And that's the iconic Michael Jordan 17-footer extended follow-through game winner.
Yep, and that was against the
player?
Malone was on that team, right?
Yeah. Yes. So that was the Karl Malone, John Stockton, Jeff Hornacek, and Brian Russell was the sort of lockdown defender, if you want to call him that. No one locked down Michael, but
yeah.
And there were other NBA finals. I picked the best ones out of that bunch. So, you got a preference here?
I would like to go with one of the strikeout guys.
Sure.
Do you like Warren Spahn with 15 innings of pitching? Or do you like Nolan Ryan?
I've always growing up, Nolan Ryan was still pitching, and it was remarkable. He
pitched into his 40s, I believe. Yeah,
mid 40s. Like he was like the Tom Brady of Major League Baseball at that point in terms of just like
he retired for a month and a half,
playing beyond the normal shelf life. But I think we've talked about Nolan Ryan. I think we might have even picked him as episode 34 maybe as our athlete. So
okay.
That's my guess. So let's go with Warren Spahn. You good with that?
I'm good with that. Yeah, I don't think Warren Spahn is going to come up again.
Well, you have little faith.
Yeah, that might be true.
All right. One thing you liked.
Okay, so this last week, Monday to Wednesday, I was in. I'm getting feedback. You getting feedback? No? Okay. I was in Phoenix. I was in Tempe, Arizona, at a conference and stayed at the Tempe Missions Palms, a destination hotel.
Okay.
And this place was stunning. Outside of being at a conference and hearing from, a pastor who is thinking through some things in really, I think, good ways, and Tom Nelson connecting with colleagues there was great from different schools. Just being able to sit around and talk to people that I see on Zoom calls all the time, but being able to see them in person is really, really nice. And staying at a destination hotel in Tempe where it was 112 degrees.
Okay.
It was hot.
Yeah, but it was a dry heat, right?
Yeah, but it was like so dry that the sweat wouldn't stay on your body heat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that's not the time of year. That's not the ideal time of year, I think,
Sure.
for a trip to that. But
you should have heard. So the shuttle driver that was driving me to the place, I was like, okay, so how close are we to Arizona State? He goes, oh, we're right on the campus. And we're pulling up to the toilet. He goes, there's the stadium. I was like, man, let me tell you, I love Herm Edwards. That's what I told the guy. He goes, he eats breakfast in our hotel all the time. I went, you're telling me I might meet Herm Edwards? And he was like, maybe. Never happened.
Ugh.
Did not see the Herminator there.
Ugh, that's too bad.
That would have been a moment.
That would have been a moment.
That and the Kevin Harlan story.
Yes. You play to win the game.
Hello.
Yeah. He's an interesting human being for sure. Well, my one thing I liked this week was I was at a wedding this week. Oh. My younger son's best friend from high school.
Nice.
Got married.
Nice.
And so both Jake and his girlfriend Autumn were a part of the wedding party.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just weird to see a kid that you coached in basketball, knew since he was like a bit of an awkward homeschooled fourth grader, now getting married. But the wedding was a lot of fun, and it embodied their personalities. They had Christmas colors.
Okay.
They both really love Christmas, so even though they're getting married in June, they want the Christmas colors.
Christmas in June.
Yes. So bridesmaids wore like a pine green, and Landon, the groom, wore a maroon suit.
I thought you were about to tell me he wore a Santa suit.
Well, he might have thought of it. It wouldn't surprise me. Which was kind of funny because it was supposed to be outside, and then it was moved inside into one of our buildings here, the Heritage Hall, the old Rhoda Haver.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're up on the stage, and at the back of the stage there is a maroon curtain.
Oh, did he blend right in?
A little bit.
Oh, man, that's great.
Kind of funny. It was kind of funny. So just fun. Congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Landon Twombly.
Twombs.
Yes. So, well, we have talked Kevin Harlan.
That was a great story, wasn't it?
That was a great story. We've talked Mere Evangelism. For next week, we'll talk chapters 7 and 8. We've talked why Christian movies are so bad. We've talked about Warren Spahn. We've talked about
the great Warren Spahn.
Yes. We've talked about John's time in Phoenix. And we've talked about a wedding. I think by definition we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so all that's left to say is until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.